Hi guys, and welcome to this video tutorial. My name is Paul. I'm the creator of the WebRemote tool for the FlyByWire A320 aircraft for Microsoft Flight Simulator. In this video I will show you how to set up the tool for remote access so you can control your aircraft from an external device, for instance a cell phone or any other touchscreen. Parallel to that, I want to use my paint skills to give you a little bit of background information, what we're installing on which machine and how things are connected to each other. So let's go right into it, jump to the setup guide, maybe put this to the side, and first up we will find a couple of programs that we need to have installed and running before we can install the actual WebRemote. Number one being of course the Microsoft Flight Simulator itself. I installed that before. Personally, I use the Steam version, however, it should be of no difference to you, whichever version you are using. Secondly, we need the FlyByWire A320 add-on, of course. I installed that using the installer that comes with it. And please note this remark here. WebRemote is tested with the current development version, so I always try to synchronize the latest development version with the current version of WebRemote. If you use the installer, this will be the option you're looking for. Choose the development version, not the stable one. I also did that before, so we can close that. And what I also did, of course, was to download and unzip the WebRemote installation folder with the README file that we have on the right side here, the web folder and the extra folder. Lastly, we need the FSU IPC tool for Microsoft Flight Simulator and the FSU IPC WebSocket server, which however is bundled with the tool. So for us it's enough to just open this third link and choose the correct version. For me this is the 64-bit version of FSU IPC 7. So let me download that real quick. Alright, so I just downloaded the file, I unzipped it to the desktop. This is what we end up with, and from here we can call the executable and install the FSU IPC 7. I will mostly go with the full feature set here. What I don't like is the auto start feature. It's just personal taste. It's up to you what you want to use. And what I also need is the documentation. What is important though is that we will install the WebSocket server under the extras. Then let me just put this installation on the desktop just so we have everything in good view. And what we will not need is the, let's call it pro version or pay version of the FSU IPC. There's some extra features that you could purchase, get a key for, but we will not use those for the WebRemote tool, so we can skip that. Also, again, personal taste, I will not add the desktop shortcut, because in fact it's not just a shortcut to start the FSU IPC, but as it says, starts the Microsoft Flight Simulator together with the FSU IPC. And I just want to start everything after each other. So I will deactivate this and finish the installation. The install folder we can now remove, and what we have here, I put it here, is the folder where we installed FSU IPC2. Let me reflect the things we did so far in our little artwork. So next to the Flight Simulator, we now installed the FSU IPC 7 tool. And bundled with that, just for clarity, I will put it in an extra box, is the WebSocket server. What we also have is a hard disk, somewhere in our computer, of course. And on this hard disk, we have the installation folder of the WebRemote tool. So let's call it the WebRemote source code. This will be clearer in a little while, why we put this on this drawing. So that's what we have. And now is a good time to check if all the things that we have here are already connected properly before we can start with the actual setup of the WebRemote. So in order to do this, let me just start up the flight simulator real quick. Okay, the simulator just started. I put us on a parking position in Munich just for testing, and we can now start up the FSU IPC. It will open in the tray, so let's open that. And you now want to go to Add-ons, WebSocket Server, and also start that. In order to check if everything is working, we want to make sure that on the first tab we have the web service indicated as running. With the default settings, that should be localhost and port 2048. That the connection to FSU IPC is running and working. And as a final check, we can go on the MSFS variables tab, check the two green indications, and then hit log hvars. If you get any output now here, everything should be connected fine. As a word of warning, do not hit the log lvars button, as there's some kind of bug at the moment that will crash the WebSocket server. So just hit the hvars. If you get any output, everything is fine for now. We have in fact finished installing the requirements, and we can now start with the actual setup of the WebRemote. Before we do that, let me also update our drawing here. So what we verified is that the flight simulator and FSU IPC are talking to each other, and also the WebSocket server is talking to FSU IPC. We can now continue with the setup guide. So step 1 would be to download the WebRemote installation zip and unpack it. We did that here already, and that's also what we visualized here with the green circle. Next, we locate the My Offsets file in the extras folder and copy it to the FSU IPC installation folder. Then we restart FSU IPC. I already stopped the FSU IPC just to be on the safe side. We can now go to the extras folder, control copy the file, and control V it into the FSU IPC installation folder. Then we can start the FSU IPC again. So it opened again in the tray. Let's open it. Add-ons, WebSocket server, start the WebSocket server again. Check that everything is running and connected. Let's continue. Now we locate the index.html file in the web subfolder, and we open it in our browser. So go to the index file of the WebRemote and open it. Next, if we are running the FSU IPC WebSocket with its default settings, yes, we do, the local host and the 2048, we can enter this URL as a WebSocket tool and click connect. Actually, this is the best guess that's already pre-filled by the WebRemote tool. So let's hit connect. So if the connection works without any error message, we probably did everything correct and we are connected. However, let's just check to be sure. Maybe use those two knobs from the left ND. Let's open that. And if we manipulate any of the buttons here, we can see the changes reflected in the aircraft, and of course vice versa. So let's also check in our drawing what just happened. What we did is open up a browser, still on our local machine. That browser then accessed our source code directly from the hard disk. And when we hit connect, we made that connection to the WebSocket server that then provided the system data from the Airbus into our browser window. This concludes the local setup part of the README guide. Everything is working until now. What would optionally come next is the so-called high convenience setup. This is really only about updating to newer versions. I will skip that for now. Maybe stuff for another video. And what is more interesting to us at this point is the remote setup, so we can access our aircraft from a different machine, maybe a tablet device, a phone, or really any other touch screen. So for this next part, I already shut down the simulator, and from our drawing I removed the browser, the local browser that we used so far, because now we want to assume that we have a second device, or actually any number of devices, that all run their own browsers. From which we want to control our aircraft. Again, we need to make two connections to make that happen. Number one is to get the WebRemote source code into the browser, and once the page loaded and we hit the connect button, we must find a way to get that WebSocket data over to the other device into the browser. So for that first connection, obviously the problem is that our tablet here is not allowed to access the hard disk of our computer. And for the second part, at least without any change of configuration, the WebSocket server is not allowed to talk to any devices outside of our computer. Luckily, there's one solution that solves both problems in one go, and that would be to install a web server on our machine that serves both of these connections to our external devices. So what we want to do is we remove those connections for now. We want to install yet another program on our host computer, which is a web server. The big difference here is that the web server not only is allowed to access the local hard disk and make connections to the WebSocket server, but also to make connections to the external world via the network. Of course, there's many ways to achieve this with different types of software, other web servers. This is just the one I use because it's free, it comes with Microsoft Windows, and that's probably what you have when you watch this video. So with that explained, let's start with the actual setup. First, whenever the setup guide talks of a machine A, this is the one we mean, the one where Flight Simulator is running on. And if it talks about the machine B, we're talking about our external device. Also, the guide will use for all the settings that you have to make an example IP address of 192.168.0.2. But that's just an example. In order for your setup to work, you need to find out what your IP address is. And one way to do this in Microsoft Windows is to open the Start menu, type CMD, and then open the command prompt. And there you will just enter the command ipconfig. There's other ways to do this. I find this is the easiest one. And here we have the Ethernet adapter I'm using right now. You need to find your main adapter, and there I see my IP address is 192.168.0.3. So in fact it's different from the example IP address from the guide. So let's write that down. We will need it later. 192.168.0.3. That's the address of our machine A. Also, it might seem obvious, but just to be sure, of course, both machines need to be connected via the same network. Next, we need to install the IIS, and for this there is a program called Turn Windows Features On or Off. So we open the Start menu again, we type Turn. It should be one of the first matches. We open that, and there we look for the Internet Information Services. That's here. It's not checked for me, so I check it. I want it installed. And the sub-selection should already be set with reasonable defaults. Additionally, make sure WebSocket protocol is checked. So that's not a default. We must check that ourselves. Otherwise, the web server will not be able to make that connection. It will not understand the WebSocket connection that we need to access Microsoft Flight Simulator with. So we expand that. It's under World Wide Web Services, Application Development Features, and there you will find the WebSocket protocol. So we check that in addition to all the defaults, and we hit OK. So we're done with the installation, and now we need to install two extra modules for the IIS, which is URL and Application Requests Routing. So I open those two in a new tab, and I will download each and be with you in a second. So both files are downloaded. I put them here on the desktop, and I will now install both of them. And we can now remove the installer files just to clean things up. So with points 1 and 2 done, everything should be installed, and we can continue to configure the web server itself. For that you will have the Internet Information Service Manager, which came installed along with the IIS. So we open the Start menu. We can type IIS, there it should be. We open the manager, and we can continue with point 4. Under Application Request Routing Cache, that's the icon in front here, we go to the server proxy settings, and we enable the proxy. All the other settings, as you can see them here, should be set with good defaults for us. Don't forget to hit apply. Then we can go back. Now we can configure the default site. So on the left we locate default website, that's under sites. And the first thing we need to do here is to set the physical path to be the web folder of the WebRemote download file. So that will be under basic settings here on the right. You will find some default here on the physical path. And I will now go and choose our installation folder from the desktop. Next, we need to set the binding of that site to our IP address. Once again, this is just an example here. On my setup, I have the 03. So to do that, we go to bindings. And what I actually have here is the wildcard default. So I will leave it as it is. Should you find something like localhost here or an IP address other than the one that we found beforehand, you would need to go to add, choose the IP address that we found, in that case 03, port 80 is fine, HTTP is fine, and hit OK. So that would be the setting we need. However, this is covered with the default wildcard setting. So I removed that for my setup right here. Okay, next we have to make sure our internet server is allowed to access our installation web folder. So for this we need to add group permissions. We locate the web folder, context menu, right mouse, go to properties, security. We want to edit the permissions. We want to add new user and group. So for that we can go to advanced, just click find now without entering anything to the mask, and we want to find the IIS iUsers group, and we want to find the iUser user. You could have just typed it, however it's easy to mess things up, so it's probably better to go with the find functionality. So we have the group, we have the user, we can hit OK, and we want to make sure that both of them at least have the read execute, list folder contents, and read permissions. Once we have done that, we can hit apply, OK, OK. Once we're done with that, we are actually able to test what we set up so far. So we can open our IP address, not the localhost anymore, in a browser, and the login mask should load. It will not work yet because we still have to make that second connection to the WebSocket server. However, this here we should have already set up, and we can test it. Typing 192.168.03 in my case, and the login page loads. And just to show you what we did right now is basically we told the web server, trying to find the color here, to listen to the outside world on port 80. And if you remember the default setting from the WebSocket server before, just to get a complete picture here, that one was listening to the inside world. So it's not crossing the black bar here. That was listening to the inside world of the computer, and the port for that was the 2048. So at this point you might want to ask, why don't we just move this square a little bit, so to say, let it pass through the outer layer of the machine and have the browser connect directly to our port 2048? Well, you could do that. And I mention it here in the setup guide. However, to do that, you would have to run the WebSocket server and thus the FSU IPC and thus the Microsoft Flight Simulator with administrator privileges, which generally is a bad thing to do. So is there a better solution? Yes, of course there is, and that's what we will go and do now in the configure a forward proxy section. We continue with point 8. So once again in the IIS manager, we locate the default website. It's already open. We find the configuration editor here on the bottom. And there we want to find the system.webserver/websocket section. I already selected that here. And we want to set the enabled flag or the enabled setting to true, which also I have here already set to true. Next we want to set up the URL rewrite module with a new inbound rule. So we go back to the default website. We have the URL rewrite module right here. We add a rule, blank rule, and we can give it any name we want. Let's call it WebSocket forward rule. It will be a pattern matching rule using regular expressions, and the pattern you enter must match precisely what we have here in the setup guide. So copy paste that in, and basically what this does is it tells the server that anything that matches that type of URL, so any URL that starts with FSU IPC/ and whatever comes thereafter should be rewritten. So we go to action type rewrite, and the rewrite URL is the one you find right here. Also copy and paste it. So whatever comes into the server matching that pattern will be forwarded internally to the local host onto our port 2048, and the R1 section here is just a placeholder for whatever was input here in the first place. So this will just be substituted in the rewriting process by whatever was requested from the outside. Again, if we want to visualize this in our drawing, let's go with two examples. Say there's a request sent from the browser on B to our web server to a file, let's call it /images/icon.jpg. That's not a real file in the WebRemote, it's just an example. So the web server would find a request incoming for that image, and it will just look up that image on the disk and return it to the browser. However, because we set up that rewrite rule, let's make another request, FSU IPC/ this is a test. The rewrite rule kicks in because our request matches the pattern, and the web server will go, oh wait, this is matching my rule. I will not check the file system for that resource, but I will redirect the request internally to port 2048. And who is listening on port 2048? That's our WebSocket server. So that's basically all the magic that is happening. And the big advantage here is that we do not need to expose the port 2048 to the outside world. Everything runs through port 80. and we have one single point of connection for our browser. So to wrap that up, we still need to save and apply our inbound rule. Should be here now. And we can already test the full system. So let me start up the simulator real quick. Okay, flight simulator just started. I put us on a parking position in Rome, Fiumicino. We are now ready to start the FSU IPC7, and I have the auto start feature for the WebSocket server enabled at the moment. We can once again check everything is running. We can log the HVAR so the connection is fine. And we also check that our client URL still is localhost 2048, which is the internal connection that we need to have in order for the IIS to forward to. We can now go to the login mask of WebRemote. Again, we see there's another best guess default setting here now. For us, that's perfectly correct. We have the IP address of machine A. We have no port anymore because instead of port 2048, we use this port 80, but that's also the default, so you can omit that. And we have the FSU IPC path here, which is what we set up our rule to forward to the WebSocket server. So that's correct for us. We can hit connect and everything is working. If we are on this mask, we can just make a quick check and power up the aircraft. We have ground power available. So let's start the batteries and connect the ground power. So that sums up the full setup of the WebRemote for the FlyByWire A320. I hope I was able to clarify some issues that you guys had. If there's still some questions from your side, don't hesitate to put them in the comments below and I will do my best to answer them in a timely manner. Okay guys, there's one more thing I would like to show you, because many of you have the problem that when you have smaller devices with less screen real estate, you might soon run out of space and then you will either be switching around or moving stuff during flight. That's actually not necessary, because you can open as many tabs as you want in your browser, connect again, and just organize a completely different set of panels that way. Depending on the phase of flight you're in, you then just switch between your prepared tabs and have all the information you want at that moment. To set up multiple screens like this every flight, of course, is quite the hassle, and luckily there's a feature how we can avoid this. Actually, the README tells you about it in the quick guide section. The trick is that the current configuration of panels is always stored within the URL. So as you can see, if I move something around, also the characters up there change, reflecting the change I made on the panel. So if I'm happy with my setup and I want to reuse it, all I need to do is make another bookmark. Let's rename that one, call it setup 1 maybe. And the one we had before we want also stored, and we call that setup 2. Just as an example, if I now close both of these tabs and I open them again, I'm back with the setups that I stored. Just remember, once you move something, once you change something, you always need to store a new bookmark with the new full URL string. So I hope that saves some of you some time in their setup. Once again, thanks for watching and see you in the air.